Hey friends, I have some news. I've expanded my services and offerings under the Therapy Show umbrella, and I am helping therapists escape burnout. How, you ask? Well, the details are coming out in my next episode, but I'll spill the tea just a little bit right now. So, how do I help you with burnout? Well, so many of you are sharing with me that you'd like to cut back on the hours you are seeing clients and spend more time selling your products, but you don't know how to really make that happen. Now, I've been there and know this feeling well, and I had to make the decision on how to handle it. And you all know one of the ways I handled it was to put my energy and time into creating this podcast and ultimately, from the podcast, a passive income stream. But you guys, I did it backwards. I created the podcast first with really no clear path to monetization. Instead, I should have known what my passive income product was going to be first, create that product, and then base my podcast around that product. Think about it. Having a podcast that specifically drives traffic to your passive income products, a podcast that is evergreen and found by new listeners day after day. And those listeners then head straight to your website to learn more about you, your courses, and services. Would you be excited about that? I mean, new ears finding you every day, new customers purchasing your books, your courses, your webinars, whatever it is you're selling. Podcasting is a perfect way to market your products. Let's face it, that's usually the number one reason why people want to come onto my show. It's to pitch to my audience. Well, let's create your own podcast where you are the expert, you share the value, you share the advice and help, and then from there, they head straight to your website to purchase your products. Stop trying to get on everybody else's podcast and create your own. And that's what I'm going to teach you very, very soon. So stay tuned, you guys. Welcome to the Therapy Show podcast. I'm your host, Lisa Mustard. In each episode, I interview a seasoned and knowledgeable talk therapist from the counseling world to glean valuable insights, techniques, and tools that you can apply to your practice and your life. And if you're considering a career in the counseling field or just want to hear about what it's like to be a talk therapist, then this is the podcast for you. Hey friends, welcome back to another episode of The Therapy Show. I am really excited to have Christian Jackson on the show this week. She is a trauma specialist who works with women who are feeling a lot like she once was, overwhelmed, lost, and full of pride. You're going to learn practical ways to snap out of the haze of existing and begin learning and using tools to slow down the racing thoughts, get better sleep, examine unhealthy habits, reevaluate your relationships, and set boundaries when you work with Christian Jackson. She is the author of Daddy Issues, How to Detangle from the Sins of Our Fathers, and Daddy Issues, How to Detangle from the Sins of Our Fathers workbook and journal. She also has a course called the Grace Academy, Learn the Blueprint to Healing from Relationship Traumas. Plus, y'all, her podcast is coming out really soon. She is also a wife and mom with a busy and booming private practice here in Columbia, South Carolina. And in this episode, Christian chats about how she discovered her niche, what daddy issues are, and how she serves her audience with value, advice, and her expertise. We hope you enjoy this episode. Well, hey, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of The Therapy Show. I'm your host, Lisa Mustard, and this week's guest is I'm just going to call her the fabulous Christian Jackson because she is that and much more. Welcome to the show, Christian. It is so awesome to have you.
Thank you so much. I'm pumped to be here. I've been following you for a little bit, so I'm honored to be a guest. I'm actually here.
Yeah, you are. And I'm so thrilled to have you. So we connected back in the summer, right? Because of the South Carolina AMFT continuing education. And I think you followed me, I followed you. I just see you. We're in some of the same groups here for Columbia area therapists, and just love what you're doing, and how you're helping women. So can you tell the audience like who you are and what you do?
Yes, thank you. So I'm Christian Jackson, like she said. I'm a licensed professional counselor here in South Carolina. Just got my supervision license fully, so that's another thing that I'm doing. Nationally board certified counselor, whatever that means, right? Like we're not really sure what that means for us. But here in South Carolina, I have a private practice. I serve women who are in recovery from relationship trauma via their daddy issues, and so I wrote books about them. And so I really kind of pulled from my personal experience with my own therapist. You know how we do that thing where they say, hey, write a letter to your dad and then journal about this and that. And so that's really where a lot of my material came from. That plus what I have been doing without really knowing it. And that would be treating women who are dealing with this theme, this pattern that frankly triggered me when I was in session. So
Oh,
I'd have to say, hey, man, I need to go see Kim, who was my therapist. Shout out to Kim Fender. And so after seeing what I was able to do when I was doing my actual work and really kind of sitting with myself, then I was able to come up with things I was doing for myself that my therapist and I were working on, and what I was asking my clients to consider in their treatment. And so the book is my story. It's not about my dad, it's about my experience of him growing up, as well as those of other women that I've seen on my couch, quote unquote. And so after identifying what those things are for them, I needed to identify what daddy issues were, because my goal, of course, is to make sure that people know daddy issues is not at least as long as I have something to do with it, no longer going to be that thing that is going to just help people be villainized. Like it's daddy issues, that very theme. If you sit here and think about what daddy issues means, or what you think about when you hear that term, it's very derogatory. It's used to villainize women, degrade women, and really discredit an experience that we all have, which is really emotional trauma. And so, what I'm trying to do is give clinical language to what daddy issues is, according to Christian Jackson, of course. Like I put together some cluster of symptoms, if you will, but I based it off of separation anxiety and reactive attachment disorder. So it's inspired by that notion that I literally feel a way, some type of way, as some people would tell me, if I'm separated from my significant other. And I'm talking about fathers, of course. And so, how does that affect the way you trust yourself, your abandonment issues? How does that pull out your rejection piece? How does that affect the way that you even see yourself, how you value yourself? A lot of my personal experience with daddy issues is identity. And I share that as a part of my book, where my dad questioned my paternity, which was not my fault, right? I
right,
was just born, you know what I'm saying? And
right.
so that really took a toll on me when I would go to the doctor. I'm married, we have two kids together. And when you go to the doctor, they ask you, like, what is your family history with this? And I grew up one way thinking that this was my dad. And then he doesn't want to take a paternity test. And I'm questioning, okay, I'm carrying kids. They're asking me literally what I could be passing on to my kids. And so it really triggered a lot of identity issues with me. For me, it was a health issue, if I'm going to be real about it. And so what I want to happen in the movement is that the daddy issues movement is that with my content and my books and things, that we shift the shame, the blame, the guilt, that stigma related to daddy issues, and give language that people understand. Because I think if we look at us as women who have been dealing with and are dealing with emotional trauma, then we'd be looking at it differently. We have more empathy for those women. And that's what women who are dealing with daddy issues are going through. So if you need to hear me say it a different way,
Oh,
then we're women with emotional trauma. We are dealing with that. And we're more sympathetic to that, right? We're more empathetic to that, instead of just saying, oh, she has daddy issues. She's crazy. So I'm
right.
just wanting to give us new language. And so, of course, if we're talking about approaching it from a clinical perspective, then we would treat it as such, as an actual thing, and not just say she just likes sturdy old men and she's a whore, which is
Mhm.
what you see when you Google daddy issues. So that's in a nutshell what I do.
Wow, that's amazing.
Mm-hmm.
You speak to it so well, and you are just have such a passion for it. I mean, like, I know you
Mm-hmm.
guys can't see her face and her movement like I can. It's because we do this over
Mm-hmm.
Zoom, but I mean, you just it comes out of you. So I don't know
Mm-hmm.
what the word is, like exuberantly. I don't know if that's the right word, but I mean,
We're going to call it a word.
yeah, it just comes out so well. Um, Yeah. So I guess I have a lot of questions. So I'm thinking
Mm-hmm.
about the clinical aspect of it, but I'm also thinking about, our folks out there who are kind of thinking, do I want to niche or niche down like Christian
Mm-hmm.
has and really focus on a population? So I have a feeling that both of those questions is of interest to the audience. So
Mm-hmm.
um, remind me again, you said
Mm-hmm.
you look at the symptoms of generalized anxiety disorder and attachment disorder issues. Is that what you said?
Yeah, actually, it's separation anxiety
Separation.
and reactive attachment disorder.
Okay. Sorry, I got that so wrong.
But oh no, but I mean, but when you say that though, like
Mhm,
generalized anxiety, obviously, like a thing, right? You know,
mhm,
anything could trigger that. And so those were the things that inspired the original
mhm.
diagnosis of daddy issues, quote unquote. And
Yeah.
so since I dropped the book, I self-published it back in 2020.
Mhm,
And the next year, so this time last year, I was preparing to fill a group based on my books, and it was a Daddy Issues Healing Circle. So that went off. That was fun. 8 weeks with 6 women. We just did it virtually,
mhm,
and the symptoms, like, well, the diagnosis evolved, right?
mhm,
Because I got to hear how people were receiving my content and what didn't hit right with them, what did, and so I've added some things. I call it Daddy Issue Symptoms 2.0, and
mhm,
it does like include this grief piece. And of course, there is, more of an expansion on the abuse piece of it too, because, obviously you and I have probably seen women who have unfortunately been survivors of sexual assault by their fathers. So we have to address what that brings, right?
right.
Um, you brought up attachment, and attachment literally is a whole chapter in my book, because I don't believe we can talk about daddy issues without talking about how we show up and why we show up in relationships the way that we do. We learned that from our fathers. And so I like to talk about the spectrum.
Mhm,
So your daddy may be there or may have been there, but he may have been like emotionally distant, which is also a thing. And he may not have been there at all. You know who he was, but he wasn't there. Maybe you were adopted or whatever the case was. There are so many different
mhm,
situations, but it hands down affects everyone, because we learn how to be who we are and be who we are with other people
mhm.
by addressing the attachment piece. So I'm glad you brought that up, because that is actually a huge piece of understanding what daddy issues
Yeah.
can be.
So, okay, so you did a group, um,
Hmm.
and I guess I'm just curious, like, and I'm just really curious. So
Hmm.
the women that joined your group, did they present as knowing they had daddy issues, or was it more like current relationship
Mm.
issues, parenting issues? Just kind of wondering,
Hmm.
because not
Oh
we don't
yeah.
all know we have daddy. I mean, I know I got them. Like I raised both hands. Like I could tell you some stories. I'm
Hmm.
sure you could tell me some stories too. But I'm
Okay.
just
Yes, I
curious,
could.
like how it all kind of flushes out for you and your
That is
people
a
you.
good question. So I am a therapist, right? At my
Mhm.
core, I'm not a businesswoman. I'm still learning that. So I'm basically like, I have a business coach now, like specifically for therapists in private practice, which has been great.
Oh, good.
And so at the time, a year ago, before I met her, I was just trying to figure out how to attract people to my content, because I know it's good, right?
Yeah.
And I've gotten feedback from people who I know and who I don't know, that have told me how this has, really kind of at least given them some kind of perspective on their daddy issues. To answer your question, the short answer is they know they have daddy issues. That's really why they came.
Mhm.
When I was speaking to my audience and really trying to figure out who she was, right? Like my client avatar, quote unquote, then I do speak to the mom who is having a hard time connecting with her kid and kind of parenting out of her trauma template, as we call it, right? So
Mhm.
I try to speak to her and ask her to consider, like, where did you learn that particular parent style, and what triggered you to be so upset that your child did, quote unquote, A, B, and C to you, right? So then I'm asking a question in a way that would help her connect her current behavior and interaction with her child, with her experience as a child. So I'm
Mhm.
trying to do better at that. And that's what I started out with doing, which is just trying to ask questions in a different way, because you don't necessarily see that up front, especially if they're not glaring daddy issues. So that kind of helps me that brings up the point really about daddy's girls, quote unquote. So, the
Mm-hmm.
girls who have had good relationships with their fathers and they still do, they're not going to necessarily identify themselves as women with daddy issues. But I write about her in that chapter, what are daddy issues anyway, where I give you the diagnosis and I'm talking about like different categories of women. Daddy's girls, I share an example of a client I had who was really great with her dad. He honored her, revered her, praised her all the time, but she was in treatment with me because she did not know how to accept criticism because dad never did that. That's just one example
Right.
of how it's a blind spot for daddy's
Mm-hmm.
girls, right? And so um I really enjoy having these different conversations where people are like, Christian, now, how you think I got daddy issues when my daddy was there? Or I ain't worried about him. I ain't thought about him in years, and, we have dialogue. And that's not for me to convince you that you have daddy issues, but I'm hoping to have you open your mind, expand the lens, as I call it, when you're
Right.
thinking about specifically what this could look like for your relationship with your father. How does that impact you? Have you even thought about that? To
Mm-hmm.
whatever degree, it has had an impact on how you make decisions and, have relationships. And so the women who are in my group, I really had to kind of cast a wide net
Mm-hmm.
because I just really wanted to lead a live discussion. I just really wanted to interact. And so I was coming from all kinds of different angles. And not until literally November of 2021, I finally got this clear vision that it really does show up in relationships. And that's whatever relationship you may have. So in my books, after I define what daddy issues are with the diagnosis, and then I tell you about attachment styles just briefly so that you have a working knowledge, then every chapter in the book is daddy issues in marriage and motherhood and
Mm-hmm.
dating and, as an employee, like just so
Yeah.
that you can see how
Right.
it shows up. And then hopefully you kind of gravitate towards a chapter that makes sense for you.
Right.
And it's really good for me when I'm kind of repurposing things, really, when I'm breaking stuff down because people will receive it differently.
Right. Right. Okay. I love it. I mean, that's awesome. How long did it take for you to write the book?
Oh, I want to say 7 months.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mhm.
That's
Yeah.
awesome.
I mean, I thought it was a long time, and somebody told me that that was actually really quick. To me, I thought it was long because it was so triggering, Lisa. Like,
Oh
it's
yeah.
hard to, like, revisit some of the things
Yeah.
and go back to, like, the journal entry that I have tear stains on in my that I share with my therapist, like, it feels long for me because it is such an emotional pull.
Yeah.
But yeah, I wrote it in 2019 actually, and really wanted it to get picked up by a publisher. I was going to try to figure that out. And then COVID happened. And I was like, well, I mean, I can't just sit on this thing. I don't
Right.
want to sit on this thing.
Right. Right. Yeah. And
Mm-hmm.
how amazing for you to be so open and transparent and vulnerable to
Mm-hmm.
put your own, really
Mm-hmm.
it's your story and it's your heart and it's your stuff, wow.
Yeah, it is my stuff. It's a
You're so
lot.
brave. Yeah, you're so
Thank
brave and
you.
courageous. I mean, I'm impressed. Like, I'm not sure I
Mm-hmm.
could do that. I don't know if I could do that. So good for
Mm-hmm.
you. Hey friend, want to be more comfortable while sitting on the therapy couch? I sure did and went looking for pants and tops that were soft, wrinkle resistant, and would match just about anything I already had in my closet. And now Zaya Active makes up about 80% of my wardrobe. Would you like to learn more? Head over to my site, lisamustard.com, and click on the Activewear tab. And don't think this is just for women. They have men's and kids' clothes too, and our family is loving the quality, and I am loving the price tags. So head over to my site to check it all out. So I kind of know what's next for you, but what are you working on now? Like, how is it all played out for you with the past year? And because you said you started the virtual group, and then what was your hope? What was your plan? And then what happened?
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, that's a good question. This is you talk about being vulnerable, sis.
Yeah.
I have a social media account at Couch with Christian on my Instagram is where I'm most active.
Mm-hmm.
And I've been sharing not only my daddy issue stuff and like my content, but really the journey of my business, right? Which, has been also another layer of transparency. But I wrote the book published it July 2020. By the spring of 2021, I had my group. And that ran from like April to the beginning of June, whatever those 8 weeks were. And so that was based on my book. So I put together PowerPoints, we Google Meet, and we would just kind of go through the material. I would send them a video every week of, hey, we're going to work on this chapter and this chapter, or, right before we went, this is your homework for the week. So by the time we meet, like I had a plan for how to run the group. And it was great. I really loved it because, again, having so much vulnerable and like heartfelt discussions with women that I didn't even know, women who were have never been in therapy, and I was just thankful to be a part of a journey that could show them, hey, this does not have to suck, and you don't have to do it by yourself. And so after that group ended, I knew that, in our business, people are traveling in the summer. So, therapy sessions aren't really as consistent or whatever. And then, of course, the world had opened back up for some reason. And everybody was like, yes, 2021, we can get out of the house. So I didn't even consider doing the group again this summer. But I did really try hard in the fall to get it going. And this is where a learning opportunity came for me. I'm not calling it a failure, right? So I tried to get the group going, trying to reframe that thing for myself. And so when I kept pushing, I had a date and then I pushed it back like once or twice because I wasn't getting the traction that I did the first time. And so I really felt like I was fighting God when you were just like, Christian, like, you need to calm down. This is not going to happen this way. Because I have a tendency to say, no, this is the plan. This is how we're going, this is what we're going to do, right? That's my trauma. That's how trauma is set up, as I like to say. I just feel safer when I have a plan and we're going to do the things. But what I'm learning as an entrepreneur here is that there are more than one way to do things. There is more than one way to do things. And so I said, what I'm focusing on right now is using the content that I have, because the book is chock full of stuff. Like, it's not just what are daddy issues and motherhood and how does that show up? It's in between every chapter, you get activities that I've given to my clients that I make up off the top of my head, just like you have practical hands-on homework in between each chapter as a reflection from what you read before. Like, literally, it's got so much stuff in there. And so instead of creating new things, what I'm doing now is working on an online course. And so I figured, even when I did the Daddy Issues Healing Circles, what it was called, my group, there wouldn't be enough time to get through everything. So the women were asking for like another 30 minutes. So it went from 90 minutes to 2-hour groups. They were all fine with it because they wanted to keep talking. So basically the course content that I'm writing right now is me presenting the group in a different way. So it starts off with the book, and then I knew I wanted to do the group, but it's just too chock full of stuff. And I really want people to pace themselves because this can be triggering, And so from the group, I am birthing the online courses, which is really what I think is going to be the ticket. It's going to be small, digestible, self-paced work that you can do, but it's all my book, right? Because people, maybe they'll listen to you from your podcast or like my Instagram reels. They'll find me through my book or my online, like whatever it is. I just want you to get to what I know has been helpful and literally decreased anxiety symptoms if you work the system. And so I don't want to create new things that, although I could, but I am working on like really sitting with God and like, Christian, be mindful, pace yourself. This is good stuff. Like, you don't have to do the thing that you always do, which is, go. Because to me, that's part of how my trauma shows up. Like, I just need to always have something to do. So this is a life lesson for me. I'm trying to model that through my work. And so the course is what I'm promoting right now. And it's just a small piece. And it's so weird, Lisa, for me to do a small piece of something. Because I always want to say, hey, I have all the things. But it's a life lesson. So it's is this where you want to talk about what it is?
Yeah. If you're comfortable talking about it. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Sure.
So I feel like I've been piloting things a lot over the last couple of years, but I'm just trying stuff. I'm not afraid to ever try anything and just see what happens. But the course is called Is It Me? How My Daddy Issues May Be Jacking Up My Relationships. And so this is going to be just a general sense of you, at the very least, making the connection of what daddy issues are and how it might be trickling into my ability to connect to other people, whether that's your friends, your family, your kid, whatever, right? And so the first chapter in the course is our body response. So physically, you know, our body registers trauma and it lives there, you know, and so of course that's coming off of us reading the great Dr. Bessel van der Kolk's The Body Keeps a Score, and just recognizing the physiology, that's the word, just recognizing the physiology of trauma. And why does my gut drop like that when I get this phone call from this person or my partner or my kids when I do this thing? I really just want people to know that what we do as therapists shouldn't be a secret. Like, I went to school for it, but you ain't got to just wait for me to tell you. Like, you understand what your body does when you're triggered and fight or flight in the brain. So I get really nerdy in the first chapter because I want people to know, like, you have control. If you really want to have control of your symptoms, a good place to start is to learn how your body works and how trauma is related. And then we're talking about self-talk, of course. So CBT stuff like the ABC model, and then making that connection to your body. So if you're telling yourself something, how to just register with like your sympathetic nervous system and how can you calm that down, and like really trying to get into that. And then the inner child. So I'll probably talk about some attachment there. I'm working on actually writing that today and finishing it up. So the course it's a mini course, and as you can see, it's chock full of things. But you know, I want to leave people with a good foundation, because my plan is to, after this introduction of a mini course, it's part of a series, and it'll be, Is It Me? How My Daddy Issues Affect My Marriage, Motherhood, like you know, my chapters in my book. So I'm trying to work smart and not hard. That's the goal for me as a business person. As a helper serving my community in this way, this is me trying to give you content a different way, because maybe you don't read books, maybe you prefer a course where you hear me talking and it's more like a podcast. Like I just want to give you options as to how to go through the information. So that's where I am now, just trying to see if it works. It's pre-selling right now. I have one student.
Awesome.
So we'll see what happens. But it's quite the journey, because you know, you do question yourself, and are you doing the right things? And you know, I don't want to come off like a salesperson and come up with all the gimmicks and stuff, but you know, when it's a heartfelt project, so you know, I really want it to be successful, and that just takes certain things that I think we as counselors don't necessarily do, which is like that extra mile to make the money and do all that.
Hence your business coach. That sounds like your business coach is helping you. How did you get that? How did you sell that one pre-sale client? Like, how did you do
Girl,
that?
I don't know. That's a good question, girl, because if I can ball it up, you know, and figure it out. But I think my presence online is pretty consistent, and I think it's relatable and engaging and fun, if I do say so myself, on my Instagram. And so the person who bought it, what I'm learning about all this stuff, like this backhanded like marketing stuff, is that if you set up like sales funnels, which you probably already know, you can see how people find you and all that stuff, which is pretty cool. So this person that bought it is she's a follower from Instagram, and she's actually a therapist. So, you know, she's automatically going to see the value in it. I don't know if it's for herself or if she's doing it like to maybe inform her work or whatever. But I mean, I'm thankful for the support. So we'll see. You know, I really want it to be something that people can experience and share with people that they think it would make sense for.
Okay, so I have some questions, because I love this conversation, and thank you for like sharing all the behind the scenes and like your process. So you sold the course before you finished it?
Yes. That is apparently a thing, which is so weird to me.
Yes, it is. As a therapist, to me it was weird too, but that's kind of how it works. Like, you're supposed to pre-sell it, and then once you get that sale, then you go and create it, which blew my mind. That just, I think, because I don't know, from a therapeutic clinical role, we don't
Yes.
do that, like
Yeah. It
we do the
feels
service, then we
dishonest.
get paid sort of thing. Yeah. So,
Exactly.
but that, I know that a lot of people do that. I mean, that's
Hmm.
how, is that what your business coach put?
Yeah,
Teaches?
that, and like I'm using Thinkific.
Mhm.
And so when I first signed up and I was learning how to use it, and I'm on YouTube University, of course, and learning all the things, it's how you sell a course. And so, like, just to your point, as therapists, we give services and then we charge. You know what I'm saying? Like, it
Right.
just feels dishonest and weird to say,
Yeah.
hey, I'm selling this thing that's not even a thing yet.
Right.
Um, but I had to, of course, this is us putting our business hats on.
Mhm.
What I'm doing as I'm writing the course is writing engaging like posts
Mhm.
on Instagram. I'm like, what do you guys want to hear?
Right.
Do you think, like, would you like to know more about how your body responds? And what do you know about your nervous system and how that may um, be impacted when you're in an argument with your partner?
Right.
Like, and I'm gathering stuff. So I try to engage my followers
Mhm.
and hear from them real time. What do you actually want me to write about? Because then I'm giving you exactly what you want.
Right.
It's not
Yeah.
like I'm making it up and hoping it sells. And it's really exciting, I think, too, for people to feel like they're involved in the process.
Right.
And it gets people more engaged. I think because then they can say, oh, great, I said I want to learn about that. She's going to do this thing. Cool.
Yeah.
Instead of me guessing. So then that way it doesn't feel as dishonest, which is
Right.
really the first thing that came to mind when I read it. That's how people write courses. But if you're engaging your audience, then it's like you're working with them and you're showing that it's a
Mhm.
collaborative effort. Just like when I'm supporting you in therapy, it's a collaboration. I
Right.
know a little bit more. I'm an expert, quote unquote, but you're the expert on your life. So, like,
Right.
let's come
Yeah.
together and figure out how we can support,
Yeah.
or how I can
Yeah.
support. Mm-hmm.
This is so awesome. So if folks are curious and they want to go ahead and sign up, what's the best
Mm-hmm.
place for them to do that?
Yeah, you can go. The easiest thing to do is go to my Instagram account,
Mhm.
which is at Couch with Christian, just all one word, Christian.
Mhm.
And there's a link on my bio, and it actually says, "Is it me?" online course or something like that. It's the first link, the link in my bio. It'll take you to the course to read more about it before you
Mhm.
purchase. Right now, it's pre-ordering or pre-selling, and it'll tell you its pre-order status, and then you can
Gotcha.
kind of see how many lessons are there, so you can actually see I am working on it. I'm uploading lessons,
Yeah.
guys.
I gotcha.
And then of course you can go to my website too, and I just added a courses page on my website.
Okay.
I'm calling it right now the Grace Academy,
Mm.
because I plan on, of course, having several courses.
Mhm.
And the Grace Academy is for people who want to engage with my content and whatever I may write in the future. Right now, it's daddy issue stuff. That's the
Right.
focus. And Grace is an acronym for how I present a formula for getting over daddy issues. And so it's kind of like a play on those words. But my Instagram account, and or my website, couchwithchristian.com.
Okay. And I'll link to all that in the show notes.
Okay.
So folks, if you didn't catch that, just go to the show notes and you can click on it and find out more there. And I
Mm-hmm.
know you also said you are doing supervision. Is that right? Are
Mm-hmm.
you just okay? Are you taking new supervisees?
Yes, I
All
am. I
right.
actually, we had to set this time because I had a supervisory
Mhm.
call right before coming on here. So yeah, I have room for LPC-As. I just finished up two in October, and
Mhm.
I started over with another one like the next month. So I've been
Amazing.
working with her for a couple months now, and I got my first LPC-S candidate.
Awesome.
So that's who I met with today. And so I am finding myself there as a leader, which is kind of interesting. So yeah, I have room for all that right now.
That's exciting. And then are you also doing private practice?
Yes. So
Okay.
my private practice is, I used to co-own one with friends
Mhm.
up until since 2017, up until the 31st of
Mhm.
2021, December 31st. So now it's all me.
Okay.
I've got just Couch with Christian is my private practice, and you can go to my website and um, fill out a form so that we can schedule a
Yeah.
consultation. And, for me, I am trying to do better at seeing my ideal client so that I don't
Mhm.
burn out,
I
if
hear you.
I'm honest. And so
I hear you.
I'm no longer a generalist. And part of that is because I know myself personally and professionally now. I know where
Mhm.
my strengths are. And so I think I'd be doing a disservice seeing a 13-year-old girl.
Yeah.
You
No, I
know,
hear you. And that's
yeah.
wisdom and experience speaking. And that's only helpful for people.
Mhm.
Awesome. I feel like I'm missing. Oh, and you're only licensed in South Carolina, or are you licensed in other states?
Yes.
Okay.
Only licensed here in South Carolina. I'm really hoping that they open up reciprocity. I mean, it's been 2 years of COVID and they don't see how beneficial that is for us to practice across state lines. It's ridiculous. I've had some clients move away and I really hate that. It's a whole soapbox and I can't see them for therapy. And it's just unfortunate. But yes, that's the short answer. I'm only licensed here.
Okay.
But for daddy issue support, which is another link on my website, we can talk about what that looks like if someone is appropriate for that kind of help across state lines. Then that would mean that it would look more like mental wellness coaching. And only, of course, if after we've done a couple of screens and I know that you are not actively in addiction or actively, in the throes of anxiety, then I could call that like more of a maintenance phase. And we could talk about daddy issue support because I actually just had that call this morning too from someone who's in Florida. And I was like, no, sis, you need therapy. Okay. And I'm not finna do that.
Right.
I can't really technically with my license, but I don't want to again do you a disservice. And there's pieces that are missing from the support that you could have.
Right.
So that's a whole different conversation in the field. I know people kind of transitioning to coaching and things.
Yeah.
But
yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, this has been just I'm so excited for you. And I mean, you're just doing so many things and I know I told you the other day, I really think that I know I keep saying this because I just see it being a huge marketing thing for you is to do a limited series podcast. I know I keep saying that, but I really feel like with what you have going on, it's searchable. It's interesting. You know your stuff. Like you could totally kill a 6 to 8, episode series. So I'm going to keep harassing you about that.
Yes, I'm ready. Just let me know when we can meet.
All right, we'll talk about that. We'll get that going. Well, thanks, Christian, for being here. This has just been thanks for sharing like your story and your process. And I know that a lot of folks listening are going to be inspired and just, like, do you have any like last words of wisdom about doing this? Or I know you mentioned earlier about like just seeing it as a growth opportunity instead of a failure. So is there anything else you want to kind of piggyback? I think that's just wisdom,
Yeah. I want to say that I was actually just talking about countertransference with my S candidate, and it's a very consistent pattern for us that our stuff is brought into whatever spaces that we're in. And so if I were to leave you with anything, it would be you are not your trauma. And if you find it showing up, then know that it is normal and you have been through an abnormal thing, and it does not have to inform your work, it doesn't have to take over. And so what I've done is taken my story after doing my work and figuring out what I've learned in my process and sharing the nuggets. Like something can come out of your trauma no matter how intense it is and has been for you. And that's the encouraging thing. That's how we make the world go around, and sharing what we're learning from our processes, wherever that comes from.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. Thank you. That's just great. I'm just so grateful.
You're welcome.
Thanks for coming on the show. And I look forward to maybe collaborating on something down the road. I just have a good feeling.
Yes. Me too. I'm ready.
Okay. Hey guys, before we end this episode, if you are liking my content, if you're liking my podcast, be sure to go over and leave me a 5-star review on the podcast platform of your choice. And if you are up for it, I'd love it if you left me a review as well. Well, that wraps up another episode of The Therapy Show with Lisa Mustard. I know there are hundreds of thousands of podcasts out there, and I'm thankful you've chosen to listen to mine.
Be sure to visit lisamustard.com to access the show notes and discover more fantastic content.
And I'd be grateful if you subscribe to the show. Thank you.